Andrew Yang is at it again. Hi, I'm Philip Blumel. Welcome to No Uncertain Terms, the official podcast of the Term Limits Movement for the week of May 10th, 2021.
Your sanctuary from partisan politics.
Yang caught the attention of term limit supporters when he was running for president in 2020, regularly calling for term limits on the U.S. Congress. Now he's back on the campaign trail, running for mayor of New York City and hitting the same theme. Even better, he's not the only one. U.S. Term Limits Executive Director Nick Tomblides is with us once again to discuss. Hey, Nick. Now, you and I are trying to get term limits convention resolutions passed through the state legislatures, and that's what we mostly talk about in this podcast. And that's really the nitty-gritty work of what we're doing at U.S. term limits right now. But I have to tell you, I get really excited when I hear about term limits making a big splash in an important election across the country. And we're hearing that in a couple right now. And I think the most interesting is New York City, where we have a couple of candidates running to replace Mayor Bill de Blasio, who is vacating his seat due to term limits. And these candidates are explicitly pro-term limits on the mayor and on the council.
Yes. Well, local term limits have always been sort of the foundation of the term limits movement. You know, this is not a top-down thing. It's always been bottom-up. It's always been, people at the most local level pounding the pavement, getting stuff on the ballot, voting for it, and then watching that germinate upwards to the state level and beyond. Not to mention the fact that New York City is larger than many states. But it's weird to think it's only been 12 years since Michael Bloomberg, the Grinch who stole term limits, pulled off one of the biggest scams in the history of politics. He repealed the voter-approved 8-year limit in New York City and replaced it with his own custom-made Emperor Bloomberg limit of 12 years.
Right.
And the carrot he dangled for the city council was, give me 12 years, the rest of you will get 12 too.
Yeah, that was such a scam.
It was, and they got away with it. But just 1 year after that, the voters restored the original 8-year limit by a landslide.
Right. And that's why this is so important with these candidates coming out explicitly for term limits, because the voters said in 1993, when they originally established term limits on the mayor and council, that they wanted term limits. Then the politicians tried to overturn it. 1996, voters said again, nope. They reaffirmed it in another vote. That's when Bloomberg and company pulled the scam in 2008. And so that can happen again because the courts let it happen. And even after the voters over and over said they want it, the council and mayor got together and pulled the plug on the term limits anyway. That's why this is so important.
The only three certainties in life are death, taxes, and politicians trying to repeal their own term limits.
Yeah, right.
So the people of New York can't rest on their laurels, despite the fact that just 3 years ago, the city voted again. 80% of the city voted for term limits on community boards of 8 years. The people of New York love term limits, but that's never going to stop the greedy politicians.
No.
In fact, just 3 years ago, there was a councilman, this guy, Robert Cornegi of Brooklyn. He's still on the council. He was saying that term limits needed to be revisited and lengthened again because, get this was his reason. Council members were missing out on fully vested pensions when they were only allowed to stay for 8 years. So,
oh yeah, look whose interests he's looking out for.
Exactly. It's great to see these candidates stepping out, supporting term limits. Andrew Yang, Sean Donovan, Maya Wiley, they've made this commitment to protect the 8 years. Yang is a political outsider. He's the front runner here. He ran for president in 2020, did better than anyone could have imagined. I met with him in New York City 2 years ago, and I found him to be genuinely a pro-term limits person. He told me he thought the Article 5 convention idea of going around Congress was genius. He's the front runner in this race, and so this is exciting news.
It is. And they aren't just talking, because we're always trying to get politicians to put their commitment in writing. And all three of these have signed a pledge that says, as mayor, I pledge to veto any legislation to repeal or lengthen the 8-year term limits to which elected officials in New York City are subject. So this is real deal. If one of these guys is elected, then I think that we'd feel pretty secure with term limits in New York City.
Yep, that was the hallmark of Bloomberg's scam, going around the voters and doing it inside City Hall, getting rid of term limits just using the city council. with a good mayor on board who's pro-term limits, that'll never happen again.
Right. Now, all three of these candidates are Democrats. Is there any Republican in the race?
Republican in the race? What are you talking about?
In New York City?
Well, New York City
Bloomberg was a Republican. Bloomberg was a Republican. He won.
I think they made it illegal to run as a Republican in New York City. So these candidates are Democrats, and right. There's going to be a snowball in hell before a Republican gets elected mayor of New York again.
Yeah.
This is a public service announcement.
Texas State Representative James White joined Kayla Lyons of East Texas Now to explain why he supports the term limits convention resolution that has been introduced in his state. The term limits convention bill is HJR 95 in Texas, and its language is identical to the resolutions that have already passed in Florida, Alabama, Missouri, and West Virginia. Will Texas be next?
And now we have a resolution concerning the U.S. Congress term limits. Now, this is interesting considering that, you're a state lawmaker and this resolution impacts national lawmakers. Now, term limits are something that people on both sides of the aisle agree on. So what inspired you to try and make this official?
The people. The people are crying out for this legislation. It was the state legislatures that created the federal government. And so the idea is that whether it's state government or federal government, people believe that there's a little bit too much careerism in the elected class and in politics. And the idea is, look, we've had a lot of great people to lead this country, okay? And some of those people are no longer with us. They have went on to the by and by. And folks like George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and FDR and Ronald Reagan especially. Look, we've done well. We're continuing to do well without them as they've gone to the by and by. And I think many people believe that there are some people that can also move along as well. Okay. All right. So it's the idea that maybe after 12 or 14 years, you've done all of what you can do. There are other positions in government that you can hold and serve in. You can go back to your private life, to your business, to your family, and we can always make sure that we are invigorated in government with new blood.
There's another race where term limits has reared its head down in South Carolina. We have a former Democratic Representative Joe Cunningham, spent one term in the Congress, and he's turning around now and running for governor of South Carolina. Now he's running against an incumbent, but as part of his campaign, he came out with a video, and one of his top issues is term limits on the state legislature. He actually said in the video, quote, "And how about this? Let's pass term limits to kick out the politicians in Columbia who have let us down for way too long." I like it.
Yeah, and he's certainly pointing at the right target here. As a country, we've kind of entered the era of younger, more exciting governors, but there's still some who are like these older, prehistoric politicians. And Henry McMaster, the incumbent in South Carolina, is one of those. He has been holding different statewide offices continuously since 2003, with one small break. He was attorney general, lieutenant governor, governor, and unsurprisingly, he is no fan of term limits. But Joe Cunningham, this Democratic challenger, certainly is. When he was in Congress until 2020, he co-sponsored the U.S. term limits amendment. Now he's calling for term limits on the South Carolina legislature.
Right. That's great. Now, of course, he can do a lot for the effort to term limit Congress from the governor's chair.
Yeah, I think the governor has a very powerful pulpit when it comes to the term limits convention. If the governor is a strong advocate for it, despite the fact that he doesn't need to sign the bill, he can twist some arms in the legislature to make it happen. I do think, though, there's a little bit of a misstep here in that Cunningham's focus should be on getting the South Carolina legislature to pass the term limits convention to term limit Congress rather than term limiting themselves. Because the odds are dismal that politicians will ever vote to term limit themselves. We learned that in Congress. It's a whole
and there's no
reason
initiative in South Carolina. There's no initiative process.
there's no initiative. So as much as I love term limits for everyone and their mama, I love term limits for every office from president on down to dog catcher. As a practical matter, he would be a lot better served pushing to get South Carolina to term limit Congress rather than itself.
Yeah, you're right about that. Do we have the term limits convention bill introduced in South Carolina currently?
Yes, it has been introduced, and gosh, I don't have the bill number on me right now, but
that's all right.
We've been introduced, and you can get that at termlimits.com/takeaction.
Okay, well, if you're listening, Representative Joe Cunningham, you can tweak your message a little bit. Thank you very much for bringing up the issue of term limits in this campaign. Let's make the governor answer.
By the way, in addition to Cunningham, there are a few potential Republican challengers to McMaster in the primary. State Senator Shane Massey is rumored to be jumping in, as well as a businessman, John Warren, and both of them support congressional term limits. So it's very likely that in the near future, this career politician McMaster will be quite outnumbered.
Hello, this is Scott Tillman, the National Field Director with U.S. Term Limits. We ask candidates for Congress to sign a pledge that will help us get a term limits amendment into the U.S. Constitution. That pledge reads, I pledge that as a member of Congress, I will co-sponsor and vote for the U.S. term limits amendment of 3 House terms and 2 Senate terms, and no longer limits. Every 2 years when a new session of Congress starts, the term limits amendment is reintroduced. The current resolution is Ralph Norman's H.J.R. 12 in the House, and Senator Cruz's SJR 3 in the U.S. Senate. And we have 66 co-sponsors in the House and 15 sponsors and co-sponsors in the Senate. At the same point last cycle, we only had 37 co-sponsors in the House and 14 co-sponsors in the Senate. So we're definitely making progress. You can help by contacting your senators and your representative and asking them if they would sign the pledge and asking them to co-sponsor HJR 12 or SJR 3. For more ways to help, search U.S. Term Limits on Facebook, then like and follow our national page, and then search out the page for your state and like and follow that page also. Thank you.
Where's Izzy, Phil?
Izzy Israel, the man walking across the country for term limits. He made his way into Tennessee this last week, and I think that's where he is right now.
Izzy Mania is running wild.
It is. It's fun. It's fun. We've been tracking him on whereisizzy.com.
I absolutely love this guy. He is he's the term limits trekker. He's the principled pedestrian. He's the symbol of truth, justice, and the American way. And remember, he started in Key West, Florida, 100 miles north of Havana, southernmost point of the United States. And he is now in Nashville, Tennessee, getting recognized by the Tennessee legislature for his efforts. He was recognized in a floor session of the Tennessee House this week. He got an ovation from the legislators, from everyone in the gallery. It was incredible.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to recognize gentleman Tim Izzy Israel. He's been walking across the nation. If he'll stand up, he's up here in the gallery. After becoming fed up with Congress, Washington is where he's heading to raise awareness for the need on term limits on Congress. He's been drawing all kinds of media attention throughout this walk. So y'all give it up for Izzy Israel. Thank you for your work, sir.
Just think about it. When he started on this term limits trek, do you think he had any idea he'd soon be getting recognized by the Tennessee legislature for his efforts? I mean, that's like a movie. It's like the ending to a movie. You don't see stuff like that happen in real life, but it's just a testament to this man, Tim Izzy Israel, and his determination. I just love it.
He's quite a character. I mean, he got up and started making this walk. We didn't know about it. We didn't put him up to it. We found out about it when he was already all the way up the peninsula of Florida. And that, by the way, that's a long walk. It's a long drive. So, and then we found him, and we're not the only people finding him. We have lots of media reports pretty much every other day on his progress. And of course, there's the website where people are tracking him across the country. Oh, he's a hero. He was recognized in Tennessee in the legislature by State Representative Mike Sparks, who's a big term limit proponent there. And I thought it was great. We have video on YouTube of him accepting this recognition.
It's awesome.
Yeah. He's obviously proud, and also he's he looks a little bit surprised. Izzy's great.
Not just a great term limit story, but a great American story. Thank you, Jeff Tillman, also for being Izzy's body man. And thank you, Izzy, for all you do. I just love this story. I want to actually show up somewhere and walk with Izzy. I'll probably make it like a quarter or mile or so before my knees give out. But
yeah, I know I do too. Actually, it's great. I hope he makes it all the way. It's a long. I mean, I guess once you're this far, you're committed. Especially now that he's getting this recognition. I mean,
I would join him if they could hook me up with like one of those electric Walmart scooters.
Yeah,
the entire time.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of No Uncertain Terms. The term limits convention bills are moving through the state legislatures. This could be a breakthrough year for the term limits movement. To check on the status of the term limits convention resolution in your state, go to termlimits.com/takeaction. There, you will see if it has been introduced and where it stands in the committee process on its way to the floor vote. If there's action to take, you'll see a Take